Now, the next thing that really happens is we domesticate animals. And you can see here's some paintings of domesticating animals. And domesticating animals would be everything from drinking the milk to eating the meat. But humans began to domesticate or grow and tend the grass animals fed on. So what would happen is this allowed humans to control where animals lived. Okay? So once we started to understand that probably if somebody, and we think this is an accident, obviously, but and this happened about the same time in different parts of the world, somebody started knocking over seeds, or they noticed that they peed in an area or dropped seeds in an area, and the grass started to grow thicker. And they're like, if we put these seeds in this area, we could grow more grass and we can make the cows come to us. That way we can eat the cows and we can keep them in an area, or the sheep. And then we don't have to keep chasing these cows or these animals across the world. And once we domesticate animals, we would just move back and forth with the herds. So in the summer, we would move north so there'd be more grass and food for the animals. And in the winter, you'd move more south. There'd be more grass and food in a hotter climate. Now that's called domestication. It's like taming or controlling the animals where they live. Humans could now control animals and not have to chase after them. So think about it, your dogs are domesticated. Most dogs can be domesticated, not all. Cats cannot be domesticated. They're really interesting. We use them as house pets, but you can't really domesticate a cat. If you let a cat out, it's going to probably be okay on its own. But dogs can be completely dependent on human beings to the point where if you threw a dog in the woods, it might not survive because they're so dependent on us. So we make the animals dependent on us so we can control where they live and then we can eat them. That's domestication. Now, after this is agriculture. And agriculture began about 8,000 BC. And this is where I said that we spread some seeds, or we learned that seeds, or if we went to the bathroom in certain areas, we noticed that more grass or more things were growing. So, for example, somebody knocked over some yams seeds, which is like a squash, and they knocked it over. They saw that the yams start growing there in a couple months. Then, what if I take those seeds and I knock that in another area? They did an experiment, and our ancestors learned that okay, we can grow things in certain spots if we do certain things like add water and plant it, or we bury it in the ground. And what happened is probably agriculture happened around the same places. It's only about 10,000 years old. You think about that. So human beings are probably 2 to 300,000 years old, or Homo sapiens, but we've only been farming for 8,000 years. And the areas that they go are the Mesopotamia, which have been like Sumer, in like Iraq, between the Tigris and Euphrates, China, around their rivers, the Yangtze River, the Yellow River. You got the Indus River Valley, which is like Pakistan, a little bit of India, and then Egypt as well. Later would have been Egypt and northern Africa, and the Nile River, which is the longest river in the world. And you could see that things really grew. And agriculture is when people plant seeds to grow crops. Now, probably somebody spilled some seeds. We talked about it, noticed that the grain sprouted or where the seeds fell. Grain is really grass. Most of the things we eat are a lot of times they're forms of grass. Fruits and vegetables a lot of times could be wheats or grasses. We're eating a type of grass that is easier for our body to digest. Now, the first agriculture was called slash and burn agriculture. So what the farmers did is they start cutting trees and burning them, because we knew how to start fire probably like 100,000 years ago. So we knew how to start a fire, and then we'd burn down some of the trees in the area, or cut the trees down. And ash, when you have a fire, actually makes the soil more nutritious. It puts nitrogen back in the soil, and it's easier to grow things. So that there is a purpose to forest fires. Naturally, what happens is the area will start growing, and within 10 years, it might come back even better than it was. So you could easily grow lots of food and things for people. And some of the crops could have been, wheat would probably have been one of the earliest crops. Now this led to us staying still and creating what are called small villages. People started living next to their crops in villages. Most people farmed and they created surpluses by doing this. So most people farmed, but if they had enough food, they could feed other people. So not everybody needed to farm to survive, if that makes sense. So people could become more what we call specialized. They started trading their goods too. So if I'm growing wheat and you're growing yams, or squash is I could um, I could trade the yams for your wheat. Now I can diversify my diet. One of the causes of this would have been, and I want you to think about this, is would the diet itself be better or worse? Do you think agriculture started us having better diets, or was it worse diets? Okay, and the answer honestly is that it caused worse diets. We start becoming more unhealthy. First of all, we were sedentary, so we didn't hunt and gather all day, 4 to 6 hours. We probably worked longer hours in the field, and we didn't move as much, and we ate the same stuff. So, for example, in Mexico, they would eat maize, which is corn, and their diet was almost all corn. Well, that's not good. Hunter gatherer, our ancestors were eating fish, fresh meat, berries, nuts, which are all good for you, fruits and vegetables, whatever they could pick. And these guys were sitting still and they're eating maize all day. And that would actually make you weak. And you might have some milk from the domesticated animals and some meat, but that was became more and more expensive. And the richer people in the village, we're going to find out, it would start causing people to be wealthier than others because they would get more what are called specialized. They'd have some kind of skill or job. So the guy that is specialized might get more food than other people. So if you could build a really good spear or make really good spears or you could make really good tools, they might make you the tool maker, the artisan. And as a result, you would get more and more extra food than other people in the village. So you started to do a little bit better than other people. Where hunter-gatherer societies, we were all equal, right? The women and the men all were valuable. Now, a person's trade in one-of-a-kind skill or craft is called an artisan. So the guy that made tools was an artisan in tool making. And this would later on, you guys have heard of what called blacksmiths, the people that make things out of metal for us, from swords to horseshoes to all that stuff. And there's all kinds of artisans today, people that are specifically trained in the art of something. So the art of making a spear, the art of making good tools for farming. The guys that were really good or girls that were really good at building huts. But when I say guys, I mean guys. Now it started to move that the men became more the artisans and the women would stay back with the children even more. Early communities created what is government. And we talked about government as the leadership of a village or a country or a nation. And the government had to form to keep order and to establish leadership to enforce the laws. Okay, so now these guys are enforcing the laws. So before, if you were a hunter-gatherer and you didn't get along with us and you weren't listening to the tribe, we would just kick you out of the tribe. That would be the end of it. And you'd probably go die. You'd probably be in big trouble if you got excommunicated or kicked out of the tribe. That was pretty much the end of the story, but you're no longer the tribe's problem. Where with small villages, now we had to have rules and expectations because people started to do things like take wheat from somebody else. And then we start calling that stealing. You can't have that wheat. You have to trade for it. That's not fair to take something without trade. So the government started to be mostly men too. So there might be a chief or a shaman would be a religious spiritual leader. They would be in charge of making decisions on who gets what. This is not fair. This has to happen. So there's more leadership in government. And it would later lead to things like priests and religion leaders. And this also led to the creation of social classes. So now you have people that are artisans that make special things that are making a little bit more money than other people. You have the rulers, which are at the top, and they can't make anything all day because they're so busy judging who's guilty or who's in trouble or who's innocent or who gets what if there's a dispute or an argument. So they have to get fed too. So they're put at the top of the class under the artisans, and farmers are at the bottom because they're just there. And most of them are subsistence farmers, which are farmers that just feed their families, but some would be farmers that would feed them, they'd have to feed the rest of the group. And we call this through social class. Now, social class is a group of people with similar customs, backgrounds, trainings, and income, such as farmers, craftspeople, priests, or rulers. We have social classes in America. I want you to think about what are the different social classes in America. Okay, and I want you to look at this map right here and think about, wow, they even drew social classes as far back as thousands of years ago. They could show that you could see on the bottom layer, it looks like that's probably the farmers. In the middle, You can see there's some kind of trading or animals, maybe artisans or domestic. And then at the top, you see the priests. They're sitting and maybe praying or some kind of leaders. And you could see like the leaders would start moving to the front, or they would have a better status. They might be a chief, or as we talked about, a shaman, or some kind of spiritual or other types of leaders.